In May 1990, Stephen Kuntz bought a newly restored 1942 Boeing Stearman, and the following summer he set about flying it around the United States. Kuntz, who flew A-6 intruders in Vietnam, is better known as a writer of military thrillers, and he wrote about his adventure in his 1991 book, The Cannibal Queen, which to this day is his only non-fiction book. The Cannibal Queen was an aircraft very much like this one, although she had the advantage of a bigger engine and a constant speed propeller. In all other respects, Kuntz was flying a stock vintage aircraft from the golden age of aviation, without a radio and with no more sophisticated navigation instruments than a magnetic compass. Our round trip is a less ambitious one than his. Today we're flying passengers around the block in Washington State on the border with Oregon. This is a naval variant of the original Stearman Model 75, designated N2S-3. In fact, Stearman was a colloquial name that stuck long after Lloyd Stearman conceded ownership of the company to Boeing in 1934. About 8,500 of these aircraft were manufactured, mostly to serve as basic trainers for the United States Army Air Force, the US Navy and the Royal Canadian Air Force, and most North American pilots in World War II learned to fly on one of these. It's a simple aircraft with only basic instrumentation and straightforward engine management. This one has a cast ring tail wheel that can be locked for landing and takeoff, and for the most part it's easy to fly. With the standard 220 horsepower engine, it cruises at a fairly leisurely 90 miles per hour and stalls at about 50, and with an acceptable climb rate of about 800 feet per minute. The Stearman is a particularly large aircraft for a trainer, weighing almost 2,000 pounds empty. One consequence of this is that it needs assertive control inputs in all axes, which made it a good trainer. It's also a very rugged aircraft, which is probably why so many survive to this day, and many saw post-war service as crop dusters. So the book. In spirit, it's an affectionate sequel to Richard Bark's book Biplane, an account of his own cross-continent flight in a Parkes P2A. Bark wanted to discover whether you could recapture the golden age of barnstorming in the 1960s, and almost 30 years on, Kuntz's book essentially re-asks the same question. Bark's is the better book, and The Cannibal Queen reads like a collection of $100 burger stories. Although easy to fly, the Stearman is more of a handful to land. As a tail dragger, and with the pilot's seat so far back, it has pretty much zero forward visibility in the landing trim. The centre of gravity is also well behind the landing gear, which makes it very sensitive to crosswinds. Kuntz describes an early experience of shredding an aileron while negotiating a mere 4-knot crosswind, and so the saying goes, the Stearman is an aircraft you need to keep flying until you shut down the engine, otherwise it'll bite. That's why Kuntz named his Cannibal Queen. Something else that catches people out is the tall landing gear, and curiously enough, this means that it's the transitioning pilot that's more likely to bounce this aircraft than a novice. Kuntz sold the Cannibal Queen in 1998, and although they were reunited briefly in 2008 for a film project, these days the Queen lives out her retirement flying passengers around the block just like this.